I'm so excited to introduce Linnea. She's 20 years old and she started university about 2 weeks ago in Sweden. She's studying energy environment management. It's a 5-year education program. And about a year ago, she moved from Sweden to Darmstadt, to the home of PHI in Germany, and started an internship with the Passive House Institute. She's worked a lot with the IPHA team and also with conference proceedings. She's gotten to know a lot of people around the world through her travels and through her passion for Passive House. And she decided to take this epic trip with her mother, who is going to be highlighted a lot in a lot of the visual eye candy that you see. We're so excited to have Linnea here, and Linnea, take it away.
Thank you, Carmel. Hello, everyone. Yes, so my name is Linnea, and I'm glad to be here today to tell you more about the trip that I made this year together with my mother. I will share my screen. Yes, so like Carmel said, I started to work for PHI in Darmstadt last year, and I also worked a lot with the International Passive House Association, where I worked with a lot of different countries and met a lot of people passionate about Passive House. And I was there for 7 months, and after that my mother asked me what I wanted to do before I would start at the university, which I did now 2 weeks ago. And I said that I would like to travel. I always dreamed about doing Interrail through Europe. So I told her my plan, but it was not really a plan. So she said, "Yeah, but with who are you going, and what are your plans?" And I was very open for to do it with her, because that was her suggestion. In the beginning, I was like, with my mother, I don't know if that's a good idea. But in the end, we said that we are good at working together. I've worked with her. I'm still working for IG Passive House in Sweden, which is one of the affiliates. So we said, okay, let's go. We try. Yes, so we said the idea was that the old and the new generation would go on a sustainability tour. And it was 63 days through 19 countries. And yes, I will tell you more about it during this presentation. So with everyone that we met during our trip, we made a movement that we decided before we started the trip. Because, like on social media now, it's good to have something that shows like something special that you can show others. So for us, it was for our planet, take the train, build passive houses, and change your life. And with that, we wanted to show that we're doing this for our planet, but yes, not only build passive houses, take the train, and then would change your life. We also included to eat vegetarian food, and yes, to travel by not only train with like bus and local traffic and electric cars and so on. So we wanted to show everything on Instagram, or we did. We showed everything on Instagram, and you can find it at Passive Voyage. And the idea behind this was to spread knowledge in a fun way, because I myself know that sometimes when my mother is talking about Passive House, it can be a little bit too much technical, and then I'm like zooming away. It's interesting, but if you only hear like the technical stuff, for me, it sometimes can get a little bit bored. So we wanted to do it in a fun way to spread knowledge about Passive House, and also about like to eat vegetarian food and different options in the different countries. And that energy efficiency cannot be achieved without cooperation was also an important part that we wanted to show. All our projects, or all the projects that I will also show you during this presentation, are presented by short movies or reels with the text on Instagram that we made every day. And each day we also made a summary of the day with a reel and a text. So you can basically find everything that we did in 63 days on Instagram. And we also presented all the manufacturers and company and the study visits that we made of different products. Everything is on Instagram. So let's start with week 0, because we started 1 week before the actual trip. We're starting in Sweden, in Småland, because we actually have a lot of passive houses there too. Most of them are schools. So we got in contact with the municipality of Älmhult, where there are 3 passive houses that my mother, she collaborated with them a lot, and they were building them a couple of years ago, and the last one was finished last year, Paradis School. And we also visited EV Products. They are doing FTX units, and Torp's Big Element, which is a prefab concrete wall. They are doing prefab concrete walls without thermal bridges. And we started the first night in our own passive house in Växjö, the round passive house called Villa Circuitus. So here on the right you can see the picture of our house at home, and on the left are some pictures from the schools in Sweden. So then the trip began at the 2nd of April. We took the train to Stockholm, and then we took the ferry to Åland, to Mariehamn, where we met Nils Erik. He is the former CEO of Viking Line, which is the company, the ferry company. And he told us a lot about the sustainable work they're doing. And you can find more information about that on Viking Line's website. And he lives in a passive house on Mariehamn, on Åland. And we stayed there for 1 night. And then we took the ferry again to Finland, but to the mainland. We stayed in Turku and Loima, and we had a study visit at Valox, they're also doing FTX units. And then we took the ferry again to Estonia, where we stayed in Villa Leis in Pölva, where we met Kulda Leis. And from Estonia, we actually traveled by car, an electric car, to Riga, where we stayed in Villa Circuitus 3.0. You will later see a picture of Villa Circuitus 2.0. And we also saw a passive house library and the construction of passive house windows. In Lithuania, that was the end of week 1. We celebrated Easter, because we forgot actually that it was about Easter we were about to travel. So, but the families that we were staying with, they invited us for Easter, so we celebrated with them. And we stayed in a pilot house. And here are some pictures. On the right, in the upper corner is the Villa Circuitus 3.0, and under that is the library that you can see. And here are the 4 passive houses that we stayed in during week 1. The second week, we took the bus from Lithuania to Austria, to Vienna, and we stayed 2 nights in a student dorm called Greenhouse. We also met Gunther Lang, who is the CEO or founder of Passaton. And with him, we made a bike tour through the city, and we saw around 30 passive houses, all different kind of buildings. You can see some of them on the pictures. And then we took the train to Poland, where we stayed in Katowice, Krakow, and Kokoto. That night was spent in Passive House Domplatz, and we saw the Swiss Brace production. And Swiss Brace is the spacers between the glazing. You can see that also on the picture, the yellow one. Yes, and they also showed us Passive House kindergarten, healthcare center, and sports hall in Krakow. In Slovakia, we saw a quite unique passive house. It was made out of straw bale. That's the company EcoCocon. And we met Björn Kierulf there, who's the CEO of EcoCocon, and we stayed in his house. It was not a passive house, but we also showed not non-passive houses on Instagram because we wanted to compare them with passive house. And then it was time to celebrate Easter again, but this time in Sofia in Bulgaria, and we stayed in Villa Rosa. Rosa is actually the name of the dog that you can see on the picture. Really cute. And you can also see the straw bale construction or the building system. And Björn is also in the picture on the left. And here are the 3 passive houses that we stayed in during week 2. The 3rd week, we started the week by taking a night bus for 16 hours from Sofia to Athens. That was really interesting because no one could speak English, so we were kind of lost. And then between the countries, you had to stop a lot of times and show the passport and so on. But once we were there, it was really nice, and we stayed in a apartment refurbishment for 3 days. So we had also time to explore the city a bit, which was really nice. And we also met the Hellenic Passive House Institute, the affiliate in Greece. And the 4th night, we stayed in a passive house villa in the mountains, a bit outside of Athens. And the last night was spent in Patras in an Airbnb called Enna Villas. And during our time in Greece, the Greek TV had also an interview with us. And this is also now translated, so with English subtitles. You can also check that out on Instagram. And then it was time to take the last ferry from Patras to Bari in Italy, where we were picked up by a passive house expert who showed us Bari, and then we took the car to Lecce. And we had some stops on the way, for example, in Alberobello, which is famous for the Trulli houses. And we saw, I think that's one of my favorite projects during this trip. There are 2 guys renovating a Trulli house to a passive house. It was not finished when we were there, but we're really interested to see how it goes for them. And in a couple of weeks, we will also have a follow-up meeting with all the people that we met during the trip. So really interesting to hear how it goes for them. And you can see the Trulli house up in the upper corner on the right side. And here are the places we stayed in. Yes, and after Lecce, we stayed in Rome actually for 2 days to just have a break because you need that too. And we saw the Colosseum, of course, which is a really unique and sustainable building. And then it was time to go north, back up again in Europe to the Garda Lake. And we often had stayed in a passive house hotel called Eco Bonapace. The day after, we visited the Rotoblas factory in Rovereto. And in the afternoon, we took the train to Germany in Oberaudorf, where we met Franz Freundhofer, who is famous, I would say, for his smart windows. And then we were doing tandem jump together with him the second day. And yeah, we were really excited about that. But afterwards, it was a crazy feeling. If you have the chance to do it one day, I would say do it. Definitely do it. That was really cool. And only 1 hour later, when we landed, we had to take the next train. So we were a bit in a hurry, but we were still so like full of energy and yeah, afterwards. So it was not easy to sit still on the on the train to Gunzborg, where we met a really nice and funny guy called his name is Martin Endhardt. He's the king of retrofits. He has, I don't know how many projects, I don't remember, but it was a lot of retrofit projects that he has worked on and is still working on. And he himself live in a retrofit in a passive house. You can see it in the picture in the middle of the picture. And the day after, we took the train to Schwetzingen and met Jens Lude Herms, who showed us the Proclima factory. In Proclima, they are doing air tightness products. And then we landed in Heidelberg, in the Heidelberg Bahnstadt, who has more than 3,700 passive house apartments, schools, cinema, and supermarket. And we stayed in a student dorm there. And it was really interesting to hear people in my age telling how it is, telling me or us or everyone on Instagram how it is to live in a passive house student dorm. Yes, you can also find that on Instagram. It's a really nice and interesting presentation we had with them. Here are some more pictures from Rome and the passive houses. The student dorm was called Collegium Academicum. Yes, and then it was time for week 5. And this is also the week where we were passing half day. But we started the week in Halle, in Villa Ellipse. Ellipse, the house has the name because of the form of the house, which is like an ellipse. And in Halle, we also saw the production of Schöck, the thermal anchors. And we wanted to go, after Halle, we wanted to go to Prague, but the train in Germany was delayed. That happens a lot. I have a lot of experience of that. So unfortunately, we had to go back with one more night in Vienna, but that was not like a problem because Vienna is really nice and beautiful. And we stayed one more night in a passive house student dorm, OEAD housing, and we stayed in one of their 9 student apartments house that they have. I think 7 of them are in Vienna and 2 of them are outside of Vienna. We also met Alexandra and Martina, the authors of the children book We're Building Us a Passive House. And we stayed in a tiny house, it's called Wohnwagon. And the day after that, we saw the production of cellulose. We visited Isocell. And we met Günther Lang again, the guy with the Passaton, the bike tour app. But this time he showed us his Passive House Scheibe, which is actually the inspiration to our house that we live in Sweden. You will see it on the picture here on the right. It looks almost the same. Okay, we are still in Austria, in Innsbruck, where we met Passive House Austria, the affiliates. We met a lot of affiliates, really funny. And Laszlo Lepp, he showed us most of the passive houses they have there, but we couldn't see all of them because there are 1,000 apartments, passive house apartments renovated. And also, fun fact, the upcoming International Passive House Conference will be held in Innsbruck next year in April. Yes, you should join. And yes, we stayed also in Schönau, am Königssee. It's called. That's back in Germany again. In one of the Explorer hotels. I think there are 10 Explorer hotels, and we stayed in one of them. They're focusing a lot about sustainability, also with food and transportation from and back to and back from the hotel. And Then we stayed 2 nights at the Bodensee, so from one sea to the next one, or from one lake to the next one, in Villa Oak Tree, which is a 20-year-old passive house villa and works, as it should. Still going strong. And in Switzerland, we said hello to Siga one night and saw the airtightness products that they have. And then it was time for a new country. It was time to go to south of France. We stayed in Villa Heliasol, and we also stayed in Les Trousses, a renovated passive house. The old couple that we stayed with showed us a sustainable vineyard, which was really interesting. And here are some pictures from the Königssee. It's they are not having a filter. I promise, it's original. It's really beautiful. And here are the passive houses we stayed in. The hotel on the left. Yes, we had a lot of unluck during weeks 5 and 6. It was raining every day, from morning to evening, and during the night, every day. And we thought, now that we're going to Spain, I mean, Spain always has good weather, Barcelona especially, we thought. But the first day we arrived, we brought the rain with us, but that was not a problem because it was really nice anyway. We had time to go to Villa de Cans, which is outside of Barcelona, and we stayed there in a renovated villa. We also stayed in a show pass, which is an Enerfit, and a renovated loft called Petit Passive. We also had time we had 2 more days in Barcelona where it were not raining, and we had time to see the beautiful buildings of Gaudi, for example, La Sagrada de Familia. Then we took the fast train to Madrid, where we met a guy. He started to collect money a couple of years ago to build this passive house, like a passive house elderly accommodation. And the company he works for is Reshogar. And his story behind this passive house is really interesting, and if you have time you can check it out. And then it was time to go to Portugal. I had never been to Portugal, so my expectations were high. We were first in Lisbon. We couldn't find a passive house there. I think there is one, but we didn't get in contact with the owner. But we stayed just there to also relax a bit. Before we went to Ilhavo and Aveiro for 2 nights, we met Passive House Portugal, and then we also stayed 1 night in Porto, outside of Porto, and we actually celebrated 50 days in Porto. That was a big day for us. 50 sounds like it's a lot. It was we had waited for that day to come. It felt so far away, but the time went really fast. And we also saw a window manufacturing of composite, and 2 different passive houses outside of Porto too. We also got in contact with Alfonso, the CEO of a sustainable vineyard in Portugal. So we were also there, and the wine in Portugal is one of the best wines that I had. I didn't have so much wine yet, but that one was really nice. And here are some pictures from when we were celebrating 50 days in Porto and from Portugal. And here are the passive houses in Spain and the ones in Portugal. It was time to go back to Spain, but this time on the northern part of Spain, to Leon. we stayed in a renovated Clio, built by or renovated by Susanne Teumer from the Passive House Institute. And we also saw newly built passive house villas with zero heat demand. I think it was around 20 villas, and some of them are still under construction. And in Spain, the last night was spent in Vitoria-Gasteiz, in the Passive House hotel and apartment house called Cora Green City. And now we were back in France again, on the northern part of France, in Fontainebleau, outside of Paris. We saw Villa Gaucher, a Passive House wooden building, which is still under construction, and they're building it in the middle of the forest, so with really beautiful nature. Yes, and then only 10 minutes from Fontainebleau, you can find the small town Avon, where we stayed in Villa Hegemann, a renovated passive house. And also outside of Paris, in Maison-Marly, but on the western side of Paris, you can find a passive house villa made by the architects Misha and Milena. And here are the 4 passive houses. Week 9, also the last week, but we didn't know that when we started this week. The first, we had a little bit, it was not easy to go to Brussels from Paris. The trip was about to take 1 hour and 20 minutes with the fast train, but it took us maybe 4 or even 5 hours, because with the Interrail ticket that we had, you could not take the fast train. So we had to take like short regional trains and stop maybe 4 times, I think. And we stayed in a passive house hotel called Meininger, and it was that evening we were a little bit like, okay, now some things are they're not going as they should. For example, now with the train, we were a little bit irritated about the Interrail ticket, that it should have been worked on all the trains because it said so. And we also heard about the train strikes in the UK, and we were tired. So we decided that evening to shorten the trip, and instead of taking the train to London the day after, we took the train to Rotterdam in the Netherlands. We were a little bit sad about this, because we know that the UK, they have a lot of interesting and cool projects that we would like to see, but we said that we will go there another time. And we met Jan Geerts in Rotterdam. He showed us a passive house office and apartment house under construction in Rotterdam. And after that, we took his electric car to Hilvarenbeek, where we stayed in his newly built wooden passive house. And then we were back in Germany again, where we stayed 2 nights, 1 night in Hanover in Springe, in the Energy and Environment Center EUZ, which has been active since 40 years, and they have 2 passive house buildings, and it's an education center. And in Hamburg, we stayed in Villa Vegas. The second last night was spent in Denmark, so we felt almost home, because we could understand the language of it. And we stayed in Villa Pedersen, and we were celebrating with them that this is like the final day of the trip, because the last day was spent back again in Sweden, in Växjö, in Vikensved, in Villa Circuitus 2.0. So the Villa Circuitus 1 is the round house that we live in, and Villa Circuitus 2.0 is the second one that my parents built. It's a passive house office, and also a show house that you can rent and stay in. And here are the passive houses from week 9. So one more time, it's for our planet, take the train, build passive houses, and change your life. I mean, you can do this, but you can also do so much more in for our planet. And here are some links. I don't know if we have time later to check some of them out, but yeah. So my last quote is for passive houses to spread around the world, unpretentious and visible cooperation is needed, and only together can we create this kind of change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linnea, for sharing this with us today, as well as your work generally to spread this knowledge and present it in a way that's relatable to the whole world. This is definitely giving me the travel bug. Sometimes it feels like we're all, preaching to the choir or spreading the word around a very small circle. And it's undertakings like this that kind of break those barriers and connect us to the rest of the world. And you've done it so well, and have kept in touch with the people and the projects that you visited. And you've continued to post updates. So this is why we need our next gen. So with that, before we get into questions, we will take a quick break for our messages from our sponsors, and then we have lots of good questions for you.
Hi, I'd like to give a big thank you to the fine organizations that make our work at Passive House Accelerator possible. First, a big shout out to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Thank you, too, to our founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingui Architects, Glavel, Minutair, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. And thank you to our champion sponsors, Bewiso, Icon Windows and Doors, Intelligent Membranes, Proseco, and Source 2050. And thank you to our patron sponsors, Brennan, Coltraco Ultrasonics, Euroline Windows, Holstrom System, Inotech Windows and Doors, Lamelux, Owens Corning, RDH Building Science, Sanderson Sustainable Design, and US Engineered Wood T-Stud. Thank you, sponsors.
Thank you, sponsors, and thank you, Zach. I am going to kick off the question period with our question that we ask every next-gen presenter. So, Linnea, what do you think the future of Passive House is?
I think the future is to work together. I mean, there are a lot of people out there in the world that I met now that are having so much. They can so much. They know so much about like sustainability and passive house. But why not like combine? Everyone can just connect and cooperate together. I think that is what the future needs.
Hear, hear. I love that answer. And isn't that why we're all here, right? What a reason to gather. Thanks for that, Linnea. I'm going to pass it to Zach. Zach, you started the questions off and you had two great ones. So if you want to get that going, and then we'll drop in the who else is on deck for questions. And if you
absolutely, and
awesome.
I don't remember what I asked, which is like that's so classic, right? I asked a lot of questions. I think it was Linnea, really fantastic presentation and really inspiring to see. I'm just so jealous of the trip. I want to. I think a lot of us want to follow in your footsteps.
Well, Zach, one of your questions was, are you starting a travel agency? But I don't think that was the one that we were trying to get to.
No. Okay. So I think the first one that I asked was basically what did it feel like to be in these passive houses? But I think I also recognize that it might be hard for you to evaluate that because you grew up in a passive house. So maybe that's the first one. Were there any unique experiences that you in kind of being in all these different passive house buildings? And then also, I guess to follow up on that, were there any buildings that really surprised you when you were on this voyage?
Okay. My answer to your first question is that in Vienna, for example, it's very loud there. We were staying in a student room in the center of Vienna. And when we didn't hear anything when we were inside of the building. But when we opened the door, it was noisy. It was a lot of cars and people. And in front of the student house apartment building, there is also, I think it's called a Prater. It's like a Tivoli. And that's basically, you can see it from the apartment. But when you close the door, you couldn't hear anything. So that was one. I slept. The most like luxury thing during this trip was to sleep very good and very quiet in all of the passive houses, and you could really feel the difference when you were staying, like for example in Rome, where we couldn't find a passive house. We stayed in a normal hotel, and the air quality was so bad. And when we were opening the windows to get in more air, we couldn't like sleep because it was too loud. Yeah. So that was one example. And the most interesting building, I think it was to stay in this one Villa Oak Tree, which is 20 years old. And I think that's like a really nice example of that a passive house really works still after 20 years. And that was also a very beautiful passive house with a lot of, they were thinking about a lot about the nature and the like green, the leaves, the green was like growing on the house or around the house. It was a really, really cool house. That one I liked, I think, the most.
Excellent. Thank you. I have a ton of follow-up questions, but I know there are other people who have questions, so maybe I'll cede the floor. Thanks.
Perfect. Yeah, I think maybe all of our questions are they nicely lead into one another. So I think we're all of similar mind. So Sean, do you want to ask your question? I think it's a good one to follow that one.
Yeah, and maybe I'll be more specific to maybe the manufacturing facilities you went to. Was there a unique product that you saw that's kind of in production that's going to be, innovative, that's going to help us out to find some of those, small detail solutions we're looking for? So yeah, was there any unique products that you saw from the manufacturers that you're excited to see come to the passive house market?
I mean, all of them that we visited, my mother has worked with the companies a lot, so we have them already. For example, in our own house and in all the schools in Sweden, there are all of these products from the different companies that we were visiting. So I mean, all of them are good in different kind of ways. I would say, yeah, they're also Passive House certified, most of their products, but I don't know a specific product.
Awesome. And I'm going to kick it to you, Zoe, because you were next on deck. And I think you had a specific question about a type of passive house building.
I do have some, I guess I'm wondering if we should, because I love Mary's question, and it seems like a good follow-up also. So maybe I will substitute Mary's question for my question. Mary, do you want to ask yours?
Oh, well, yeah, I was just wondering if, as you went south to warmer climates, did you notice any specific differences in design or construction approaches that were general to the warmer climates as compared to the colder ones?
Yes, I did. Good question. In Sweden, we have insulation that's this big, and in Greece, for example, it's like this. So I was surprised that, I mean, I was not really surprised, but it was still like a surprise for me to see that it works in warm climates, but they don't need as much insulation as we do in Sweden, of course. And yeah, they also have different kind of windows, and like the I don't remember the name now, but the window frame is different in, for example, Greece than in Sweden. And in Sweden, we also have a law that we need to have a 3 glazing window. And in Greece, for example, I don't think that's a law, but I'm not sure. But yes, it was a big difference. But the indoor climate was the same in Greece and in all of the passive houses.
As a follow-up to that, were there particular challenges in all the different climate zones? That, like, was there a climate zone that had any challenges that were really notable to you, where you thought, oh, you know, that that's a tough one to address? I guess just any reflections on different climate zones and you know, how to address unique challenges.
I think, but this is not like just for one country. I think all countries have this kind of problem to reach out to the politicians, and that I think almost every night when we stayed with a new family, we were talking about the same things, and it was about to reach out to the politicians, and because we need somehow to reach them, because otherwise we cannot really do it ourselves. I mean, if we are a lot of people, then maybe yes, but they're having so much impact on us. So, but it's not easy to get them to find this interesting. But this was a challenge that almost every country had. And then some countries, they don't have, for example, passive house windows. In Sweden, for example, we not even have one passive house window, so we need to export them from different countries. And it's the same with other products. In Greece, they don't have a lot of passive house products, so they need to export them. And that's also a question of the price to build a passive house, which can be a challenge for some people then.
Definitely. Yeah, thanks. It's a great answer to that one.
It seems like your Passive House travel agency should focus on sending politicians on sustainable, travel and accommodations, and get them to feel and see the differences that you've seen. That maybe would change their minds and get them to understand. So with that in mind, in terms of how do we sell Passive House, how do we talk about Passive House to different users or practitioners? Dale, you're next up with a relevant question to that topic.
There, thank you. Actually, I think it was Beverly's question. She sent to me and I forwarded.
I sent it to Dale accidentally. Don't eat and text at the same time. This is the lesson. My question is sort of like, what surprised you, especially hearing from like residents or designers or builders? I mean, you know this field a lot, but there must have been some surprising things along the way.
In what way? Surprising things like?
Well, I mean, you mentioned it being quiet, right, as an attribute, but what did people talk about being in passive houses that might have been surprising, not what you would have expected?
In Estonia, we met Kulla Leis, and his wife has asthma. Is it called like that? And they were living in a really bad building before, and she couldn't breathe. She had like really strong problems with this. And now in the Passive House, she doesn't need her medicine anymore as much as before. So that's
great.
The air quality is very good and very high in our Passive House.
Thank you. That's great.
All right, I think up next we have George. George, would you like to ask your question?
Sure. First of all, can you convince my children to take a trip like this with me? Because they don't seem to be interested. No, I guess, this is an amazing thing to do with your mother. I don't know if this is the question you're referring to, Zoe, but how did this change your relationship with your mother between the two of you?
We had one night during the trip where we had a kind of a fight. I don't remember what it was about. But after that one, we thought, okay, now we need to go home. We will book the next train back home directly. But this was actually, I think we kind of needed this fight to see like how good we actually are, because we were just like, we were stressed so much. Every day was not like a relaxing trip. So we were like going on our nerves, on the other nerves all the time, and forgot to like just relax and tell us that we are doing a great job. I think that was why we had a fight, and we realized that after that we are doing a really great job, and this was like lifting us a little bit more. But when we were back in Sweden, I actually stayed with my dad in his house for 2 weeks, and we were not seeing each other, but not because we didn't want, just because we were doing other things. She were seeing, my stepdad, and I was seeing my dad, and we were seeing family and friends. So we didn't have time to see each other, but we also had a break from each other for 2 weeks after that. But now our relationship is better than ever. I think we're best friends, not only like mother-daughter.
Thanks for your honesty.
Was that one night you had a fight the night that you didn't stay in a Passive House?
Yes, it
We're all
was
wondering.
so I will blame it on that.
Too much noise, discomfort, not good sleep, right? It has real impacts.
Yes, it has.
All jokes aside, George had another good question, and it was related to I think Kim's question as well of did you need a letter or some sort of introduction from PHI or someone else to get invited to some of these houses, and or were some of these properties like Airbnb listings?
So I was, my mother, she works a lot with Germany, with the manufacturers and also like architects who built their own passive houses. So she was starting to text them, and I texted all the people that I met, for example, at the conference or at the Passive House camp that we had in Ireland last year, and so we were just starting to email, or also I called a lot of people and asked them if they know someone who has a passive house in the different countries. For example, the affiliates were were involved a lot, and I was still working at the Passive House Institute, and they were helping me with some contacts that I could reach out to, but none was found on an Airbnb. It was one of the villas we stayed in Greece. You can find it on Airbnb, but it was not how we found it. So we were just like reaching out to people who were reaching out to people, and then in the end we were ending up with a family who said yes to hosting us for 1 or 2 nights.
All right, we have a few minutes more for questions. So Eric, would you like to ask your question? If you can't unmute, we can try to ask it for you. Three, two, one. All right. So Eric asks, after staying in so many different passive houses around Europe in different climates, I want to hear your thoughts about any interesting difference you noticed between any different buildings. I think sometimes weather or season may give a different feeling, but how do you experience so many passive houses must give you some unique impressions. And I think I'll tack on my question, which is in kind of different buildings like dorms or supermarkets, kind of what did you notice as any differences or unique features in those?
In the supermarket in Heidelberg, we only went inside for like 2 minutes to just check it out. So I never stayed there for a longer time. And we were kind of in a hurry. But in the different passive houses, I mean, they are not so different. I mean, they are. I wouldn't say that they felt. Of course, like the weather is and the climate outside of the passive house is, having an impact on maybe the feeling, but inside it, I would say it's the same everywhere, and it doesn't look the same, but it like the windows, it's the same build, like the air tightness and you feel, and we were like checking the corners, and we're also comparing the corners in a passive house in the window frame with a normal house that we stayed in one night, and yeah, it's it's comfortable in all the passive houses. It's not a huge difference, I wouldn't say.
Great, thanks. Lots of very exciting upcoming items. Okay, I have now lost track, but I believe on deck we have Oleg. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you. I was wondering if of all the buildings, the passive houses you've seen on that trip, and especially in the north, in Germany, in Switzerland, have they actually built anything using large-scale prefabricated panels?
I actually don't know really if they have. We stayed only one night in Switzerland, and we were arriving late in the evening to see the Sega factory, and then the day after in the morning we were leaving again. So I don't know much about Switzerland.
What about the north, Germany, Austria?
Can you ask the question one more time?
Large-scale prefabricated panels, to use that to build passive house. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Not really.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. It's a large panels made of wood, right, which have a structural element to it, and of course it's very precise, so you can build very tight air houses. So it actually fits quite well in the passive house realm, where the air tightness is paramount. So it's really easy, and it's easy to actually add insulation to it, external isolation, and it's pretty easy, kind of a wall sandwich to build, and it's quick, and it's really precise and quick, and it's like you can actually get the panels installed with windows and everything else. So instead of like a year to build a house, you can actually build it in 3 months.
I think we actually did this with the Villa Securitas 2.0. It sounds like that because it took us only 5 months to build it, or 4 even. So it was like Lego bytes that you were just connecting. So in Sweden we have one, but the other countries I don't know.
Okay, All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying your question.
We did have one or two more questions from Zach, unless anyone else is really eager to ask a question. But I appreciated Zach's question related to Linnea's future and like, you know, career goals. So Zach, maybe we can end it there.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think you've teed it up well. I mean, I know that you have grown up, Linnea, around, you know, like surrounded by Passive House knowledge, and you just mentioned the Villa Securitas, and there, which is a circular Passive House that your mom kind of spearheaded, right? And your mom also is the director of the Swedish kind of Passive House Institute. So you come from this really rich Passive House background, and now you're moving into university studies in sustainability and engineering, and energy rather, and engineering, right? So what can you tell us a bit about that? Do you foresee Passive House coming back into, like, getting melded into your work as a professional, or are you striking forth into a completely new area? What do you kind of see coming for yourself in your studies and your professional life?
So I study energy environment management for a reason. A lot of people say, "Ah, of course, because of your mother," but I choose not to like a building civil engineer. I choose energy environment management because it's so like a huge topic, and you can go in so many different ways. And I'm not sure if I want to go the Passive House way.
Yeah.
But I found it really interesting still, and I hope that I still feel that in a couple of years when I finish. My mother's dream is that I would take over the Swedish Passive House Institute. But my dream is to build a Passive House hotel and to,
Awesome.
be the owner of it.
Fantastic.
I had a child, so let's see. But it's a lot of years until that.
Yeah, that's exciting.
And then all of you are welcome to stay in the hotel.
Fantastic.
That's so cool. Well, thanks for giving us a little hint of that, but no pressure just because Zach keeps asking you what you're going to do next. So I think we're going to wrap up here with that final question, but we want to mention that next month's session will be on life cycle analysis. It's going to be presented by Kate Bren, from who is a performance consultant at Cyclone Energy Group. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Linnea. This has been really fun, a true next gen program. Any final words, Carmel, or any other hosts?
Thanks for sharing, and thanks for the community.